So, welcome Tim Emerson to Ordinary Visionaries. Glad to have you here.
Glad to be here. Good to see you again, Robert.
Yeah, so you and I worked together. You were my client for some time. You're working through your marketing for your practice, which we'll talk about, and what you're doing right now. And we'll get into a lot of ideas about health and healing, and perhaps beyond that. So,
Definitely beyond that.
so tell me, Tim, how are you an ordinary visionary?
Well, as you already know, I've never liked the term visionary. I think it's what people use to wrap themselves around. But I do think there's such a thing as having a unique point of view, and that's a better application here. I've always been focused on not what's new and cool, but what gets results. What has evidence for those results over on. So as you mentioned, I was doing healing work, and I was getting really good results. Whether that's because I was careful who I worked with, is this a good fit or not, or what? I can't say. There's not enough evidence. But one of the things I notice is something that universally gets complained about is that people wouldn't do the things that we knew would help, right? I ran a self-healing program once, and somebody called me afterwards and said, I'm having this trouble. I'm like, well, we covered this. Do you remember this? And she remembered it. It's like, well, did you try that? And she goes, I don't have time. I said, it would take 15 minutes. She goes, I'm a farmer. I don't have that kind of time. And so it's, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out I wasn't the only one wrestling with this. A couple of gentlemen, doctors Rolnick and Miller, were also wrestling with this, and came to and said, "Well, we're obviously asking the wrong questions. What if we understood that it's normal to be ambivalent about your life and your health, exactly as she said, because people lead busy, stressful lives, and there's always one more damn thing you're supposed to do." And they said, "Well," and they started pulling from both medicine and psychology and said, what would this look like with evidence, and testing and keeping results? What gets better results? And that has grown, and it really fascinated with me to what became actually now a governing body, the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching, which certifies coaches, but and the not in the here's your paper way, but it's the same board that tests medical doctors. So there's some real behind this. And looking at what are the things that actually help people. And it's necessary because we are a very ill society. We don't recognize it because we look at each other and go, I fit. But 80% of America is overweight. 40% is obese. A third of us are pre-diabetic and don't even know it. Heart disease, metabolic disorders, autoimmune cancers. These are, these are things that can largely be prevented. And we have a great deal of control over this. And this is not, while there's lots of new data, this is not new. We've had solid health statistics since 1920s on what makes us healthy. Really good data. And all the data since then
Tim,
simply...
the thing about health and nutrition is there's been so much false information.
Yeah, and that's exactly
the whole thing about carbohydrates versus fat versus protein. I mean, you'd think this stuff would be simple, but becomes political. And then it becomes, it becomes policy in government that you should eat this or that, the whole food pyramid thing. Anyway, so I would like to roll things back a bit before we get into this. So we sort of got
let me just
some of these.
To what you
Go
said.
ahead.
That's a whole new level of problem, because then we go, well, I can't trust this, so I'll just make up myself what I believe. which is another whole issue. On top of
Yeah.
being physically ill, we are a very mentally ill society as well. We're daily gaslit. We don't trust evidence.
Right.
It doesn't
I
make
know.
any sense. But the point of all of this is that there are reasons for it. And so we have to approach this like the people are in fact rational at some level. People are in fact doing things. It's just that, like you say, they're completely overwhelmed and shut down.
Yeah. I'd like to roll this back a bit to how you got started as a health coach. Tell me a little bit about your history, what you've done, just sort of a snapshot of
Sure.
who you are and what you've done and how you've helped people, that kind of thing.
Well, like you, I've been interested in health for a really long time. I started life as a performing musician, and people who don't know this, if you're a performing musician, you're an athlete, really. There are so many things that can go physically wrong all the time. To the point of I was up at 5 a.m. running 5 miles and doing things to, protect my wrist and my arms and et cetera, et cetera. You have to work under stress a lot, you have mental awareness. So I was very interested in health early on. I got interested in meditation early on to control stage things. And so that opened the path to a lot of doors for me. It's very interested in alternative health. But I'm also an active guy, and I had some health issues myself. Bashed up my knees. I had problems with my spine, with my eyesight, and I got involved in some alternative things that actually not only helped that but reversed it. And so I started studying it, and I used what I hate to prescribe because it's not like if you do this, you too will get these results. But there are certain circumstances where the old Bates method will help with eyesight issues, or even if it's just relaxation. I got into not only meditation but reconnective healing, which helped my back, as well as things that I think people brush by too quickly. I mean, physical therapy did wonders for my knees. But with that, what's at work here is why does this work? Why doesn't, if this works for me, why doesn't it work for everyone? So I started looking at that data, and I came up, which you may remember is my healing equation. These are the clients who are getting results. These are the 4 things that they do. And if that just makes sense, if you and if you look for a connection to things bigger than just what you are, it doesn't have to be mystical. It just means you're not getting results. You need more. You need to look comprehensively. I used to, call it, if you've got your foot on the gas and on the brake at the same time, you can't expect great results. So like, I'm doing this great meditation thing, but I'm eating junk food every day. You're not going to be healthy, no matter how hard you meditate. Taking a look at how you got there, look at change. You can't expect different things to happen if you're not going to do different things. But my point was,
we just want a pill.
A bunch of techniques that I don't think have any evidence for them, and I'm going to step on some toes here, but that I actually respect. My dog is protecting us from the delivery people. Like Ayurveda, for example, there is no good evidence for this, but people will be sending me emails saying, bye. Look, if you pay attention to your diet and your exercise and your stress all once, you are going to get better results. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's
So you're saying
network
there's no
chiropractic.
no miracle modalities.
I'm saying I have seen miracles happen, but people kept, back to your question, what got me out of this, people kept looking for miracles, but they're not willing to do the fundamentals.
Yeah.
There was a famous basketball coach in the NBA once, I forgot who offhand, but first day he goes in and say, okay, we're going to do layups. And this team is, coach, we can do this in our sleep. He goes, good. I want to see 400 of them go.
400.
As a musician, as a musician, you go backstage and you can tell who the hired extras are because they're practicing all this flashy stuff. If you look at what the day-to-day professionals are doing, they're playing long, slow scales. It's about fundamentals. When we're talking about health is no big mystery. Diet, exercise, stop smoking, stop drinking. Those over 40% of your health is just those four things. Over 40%.
Sleep is also important.
We can add sleep, stress management, having a purpose, getting out and having community, and some spiritual direction, whatever that matters to you. That's the rest of it. There will always be things that are out of your control, but these things are in your control. And it's not about, oh, I'll suffer and maybe I'll live a year longer. This will make your life better tomorrow. So,
right.
So when these guys came along and said, here's a better way to approach things, people with this, I'm like all in. I came across it. I was introduced to a doctor at a networking event because I was going to networking events because I said I wasn't good at it, and you told me, Tim, no one's good at something they've never done before, and it turned out I was very good at it.
Marketing is a lot like health too. You have to do little things, repeat them, get better at them, not try to,
Right.
go viral tomorrow, that kind of bullshit. Yeah. Anyway,
so
you're at a networking event.
Yeah. And so the barrier for this is low. There's there's some required coursework. And there are registered providers and log sessions and pass the test, the board certification test. So I said, you know what, I want to do this. So I sent myself back to school and logged the practice sessions and passed the test in the first shot, and started reaching out to folks. So the wonderful thing about this is, and it's not like coaching the way I think people usually think of coaching, which is, okay, here's what you need to do, and I'm going to hold you accountable. It's not like that at all. Rather, it's of all these different areas that we talked about, the first thing we do is a self-assessment. I have a form for that. But nobody's going to be in the same place on all of these.
Sure.
So, somebody who has an awesome diet might have, they never go out socially or something like this. And everybody's going to have different levels of readiness and motivation for each of these, because the assumption is that that we bring is towards a client is unconditional positive regard. This person knows better than anyone what's best for them. And so my job is mostly to listen. Where are they on each of these? Where are they ready to move? If somebody says, I want to exercise, but I'm not giving up smoking. Okay, this is your choice. It's not, seriously, it's not, at some point we might sit down and say, tell me what it is you got from smoking, but from their point of view, not from, so, the research supporting this, to make it simple, is if I said, Robert, here's what you ought to do, you might say, interesting. You might even say, I'm going to do it, but probably not. This well. I mean, the name of your business, Action Plan Marketing, is like, the point isn't here's the information. The point is, how do we get this into action?
Right.
And so we hand it over to the people. What's their understanding of it? What are their values? What instead of, it's really hard. There's a reason there's no comic books with Willpower Man. It's not a real superpower. It's hard to sustain. Where are there already the directions? What are their values? What are their goals? How do we align those things? In ways that make their life easier, not give them one more damn thing to worry about. One of the things I tell clients is that, not only are we going to move you toward a healthier lifestyle, you're not going to feel burdened. You're going to feel easier. You're going to feel happier. You're going to like it, what it is we're doing. And so instead of like, Robert, you need to exercise more, it's like, you tell me you need to exercise more. And so, well, Robert, what do you see as some of your options? And we start that way.
So that's an interesting aspect of it. It's like, if I say you must do these, whatever X number of exercises, you're interfacing with a system that's already conditioned. And the conditioning is, I don't exercise. I don't like to exercise. I don't have a habit of exercise. So you give me a whole routine, and that's like climbing Mount Everest. And it's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
So you got to find the interface between where you are and then some kind of goal and some kind of first step.
Right.
So, this is kind of appropriate. Go ahead.
Do you know what blue zones are?
No.
Blue zones are the areas in the world where an abnormal number of people live past 100 and healthy.
Right.
And they have certain things in common. They tend to be in rural areas. And they live, and this one fascinates me, they are in areas where the ground is not flat. Now, these people aren't hitting the ground.
So they have to walk uphill a lot, right?
Stuff is quite a bit of exercise.
Yeah.
For me, I'm stacking firewood here, and my yard slopes, just going up and down that slope with a few wheelbarrows full of firewood, and an hour of that will knock you out. And so just going about your barely stuff can be exercise. You don't necessarily have to go to the gym. So, but there are things people might like to do. I'm not going hiking, but live near the lake, you could go swimming. That's awesome. And then there are what is the things that already motivate people. There was a great Eastern Europe commercial a few years ago. It goes on and on. So it's the really, really short version. There's this old guy drags out a kettlebell about twice the size of a basketball kettlebell, and he starts trying to lift it, spring it out, and he's struggling, and the neighbors are all worried, and his daughter comes over and she's worried, and he just kind of sloughs them all off. But we see him put a picture up each time. And we flash forward weeks later, and he's doing better. And
there's a picture every day.
Yeah,
just lifting this kettlebell a few times a day or whatever. Yeah,
right. And then we go over weeks later. It's Christmas Day. He gives his little granddaughter a gift. It's a star. She's all excited. She asks him something. He nods yes. He takes her over to the tree, lifts her up, holds her out so she can put the star in the tree. What
which you could never do before.
Right. What are our real values? What are our real goals?
I discovered that, as we get older, there's kind of a resignation. Well, if you're getting older, you're going to get weaker. And, maybe there's some of that, but if you're not exercising, of course you're going to get weaker. Right. And so I'm doing a limited series of exercises to get started. I'm doing squats every day, so I do 15 squats. And that makes a lot of difference to your core strength, just being able to get up and down easily. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing push-ups, and I found out, much to my chagrin, all I could do was 10 push-ups.
This
10
is a good,
push-ups.
yeah, a lot of people will tell me, all I got is like, 10, 15 minutes. What good is that going to do? Did you go exercise for 10, 15 minutes? Call me back and we'll talk about whether that was worthwhile or not.
Yeah. Well, 2 weeks later, I can do 20 push-ups.
Yeah.
That's what I did this morning. So, and it's the thing that I'm learning about exercise is be really consistent, but don't overdo it. It's like, just if I keep doing it, within a few months, I'll be able to do 50 push-ups. And that will build my upper body strength, and I'll be able to do 25 squats. And then after that, and I do a couple other things, and then I can add something else. I'm not trying to win some bodybuilding contest.
Right.
I just want to be generally more strong,
Yeah, where you're getting that dopamine reward as well.
Yeah.
And that keeps moving you forward. I can't climb mountains every day anymore. But so I don't, but that's okay. I climb them every few days.
Right.
As we age, there are certain just facts that have nothing to do with how good we are. Is like we lose muscle mass unless we're always building it back.
Yeah.
And for bone strength, how old people fall and they break bones easily. The only thing that builds bone strength is resistance training. The only thing. And so this is especially important for elderly people and doubly so for women. It doesn't mean we have to be lifting, 600 pounds in the gym, but just there's regular resistance training, or like you said, things like squats and push-ups, body weight exercises. But at a consistent time, at certain things that fits in with the rest of our life. When am I going to do this? For me, this about me, and I'll share it quickly. I spent a good short of my life coming out of being a musician and writer, drinking. And I would get up every day, and I'm not going to drink today, and open a beer and go maybe tomorrow. And when I finally got out of that, the way that I did that was I got up and made coffee first thing. I do that to this day. It's such an ingrained habit. Been sober for over 15 years now. So if I want something to my morning routine, I do it with my morning coffee. So it's not three things. Get up, have coffee, do this. It's one thing.
Right. Yeah.
There's that Taoist saying, leaving nothing undone, everything gets done, is about building habits. It's about making it, you don't think about this, you just do it. I don't force myself to feed the cats. It's just what happens after I make coffee.
Yeah, exactly. The first thing I do in the morning after I get up is I make my protein drink. And so that's my breakfast.
Right.
So
a lot of coaching is about
things like that
for people, or if they're not ready for, also somebody doesn't have to be ready for change for coaching to happen. In fact, 80% of people aren't ready for change, but they're thinking about it. They have a reason. They know they could. They recognize a need. They're in, pre-contemplation, or they're thinking about it. And these all have different strategies for how to help somebody through that process. And then even once somebody is doing it, so, you're up when you're doing your exercises every day, Robert, things will happen that can derail things. And then, and that's largely what we do, is help people build that self-sufficiency, but also stand by for those derailments so we can get back, help over those obstacles until it becomes something that doesn't need help anymore. It takes time, 6 months to a year usually, but 3 months minimum. But it's about having you feel good about what you're doing, and being able to overlook those things. But people tend to look at the wrong things as well. It's easy when you're on the outside to see things rather than, why did you eat those potato chips? I want to know before you ate those potato chips. Take me through what happened. Right? In other words, you were already on the path there. What happened before
Right.
that? You live
Right.
you live alone. Why are there even potato chips in your house? That decision was made at the grocery store.
Exactly. So, before we started the interview, you said some pretty um, extreme things in some ways about our health in general, and I think it'd be useful if you said those things that our level of health is worse than it's ever been, et cetera, et cetera.
And sure, it's we are a very ill nation in many, many ways. And we don't recognize it because we look at each other and say, see, I fit right in. And because our lives are busy and we don't need one more damn thing to worry about. But 80% of Americans are overweight. I mean, unhealthily overweight. I'm not talking a few pounds.
80%, huh?
80%.
Over what age? After what age?
Any
You even
age.
see young kids that are really overweight.
Especially young kids. Yep.
Really?
Over 40% of Americans are obese. Now, what does this have to do with anything? So we have more pounds. If you are even a little overweight, you have chronic inflammation. If you have chronic inflammation, does several things immediately, but one of the things it does is increase your sensitivity to pain. As well as all the other things it does. So, you have aches and pains and you're overweight, you're contributing to that. But there's, all this contributes to other factors. A third of Americans are pre-diabetic and don't even know it.
A third of Americans.
A third of Americans are pre-diabetic
Wow.
and don't even know it. These are people who very likely will develop type 2 diabetes in their lifetime. And this is not something you were born with. This is a lifestyle issue. Totally fixable at this point. Once you have type 2 diabetes, it's much harder to reverse that. Metabolic disorders, autoimmune disorders, cancers, heart disease. We can't control all of it, but a lot of it we can. We've had good, solid health data since the 1920s. It's not a miracle. All the things that we can do, 4 things in particular: diet, exercise, stop smoking, stop drinking. 40% of your health right there. Then we can add to this managing stress, sleep, having a purpose, having a sense of community as some sort of spiritual focus. But those 4 things, and are typically ignored. When I ask people about their diet, they tell me about their supplements. That just tells me, unless they were prescribed, their diet is awful. Right?
Yeah. Well, I take supplements, but I try to eat decently and not too much.
Yeah.
And also, I don't try to be perfect. Yesterday at the store, I bought some cookies, but this is rare.
Yeah.
So it was a rare treat.
Right.
So,
overall,
yeah.
Where are we headed? Somewhere healthy? Or are we coasting or headed down somewhere unhealthy? And there's only one way to coast, and that's downhill. So it has, when people talk about, my exercise and my diet, it can't be something where, there's one hand behind your back forcing you to do this. It's got to be like, I'm good with this. I could do this every day for day after day.
The question is, I see in some ways exercise is simpler than diet. I mean, simply, my squats, my push-ups, my stretching exercises, it's pretty simple. I can do it in less than 15 minutes in the morning and I'm done. But food is it's complicated in a lot of ways, and we have a lot of misinformation about what's good. I mean, the American food industry has been feeding us processed, low nutritious food for a very, very long time. Like I don't like for instance, breakfast cereal is not really good for you. It's very high carb. It's often got added sugar in it.
And the sugar,
maybe is
one of the things about sugar is your insulin response. When your body encounters sugar, the very first thing it does is spike your insulin and store it out of the way as fat. It doesn't matter even if you're a beanpole, it goes straight to fat. It used to not matter when we were out baling hay for 16 hours a day, but
you can't bale hay for 16 hours. But even so, I worked on a farm for a few years, and I know what it is to stack a hay wagon and stuff like that. Yeah, it's hard to gain weight if you're doing that kind of work.
Yeah.
But back
and the misinformation, it's about going, where is there good research for this? And I know misinformation is a problem. On Just Diet, really good source for this is the Harvard plate. You can just Google it. From
the Harvard what?
The Harvard plate. Harvard has a great health component, and they actually put out in a visual form the Harvard plate, and it is. And if you look at it and go, isn't this just like the Mediterranean diet? It's close enough that Mediterranean diet is nearly the same thing. And we have good, solid research that this is a great diet. And exercise, the CDC puts out really good guidelines for how much exercise we should get minimum, what kind of exercise. You can just Google it, CDC exercise guidelines, and you can get the quick visual, or you can read the whole 100-page PDF if you're so inclined.
Right.
Smoking. There's no amount of smoking that's good for you. It's in your health. It's a habit to break. Recreational drugs. There's no amount of that's good for you. That's alcohol, and like you say, small amounts of anything. But if you're telling yourself that glass of wine or that beer once a day is healthy for you, you're lying to yourself. It's not.
Right. Maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, but more than that, yeah. So
things like you say, the trouble is that not just misinformation, but we get misinformation from our own bodies and our own minds.
What do you mean by that?
If your joints hurt, right, and your body is telling you don't move this, and that's an understandable thing to listen to. But if you don't move those joints, it's going to get worse and worse and worse, because all the sediment is going to continue to deposit in the muscular system or interskeletal system, and if you don't, the only way to move it along is to move it, and it's going to hurt, and that's just how it is. If there's, you don't want to overdo things, but you have really tired muscles. If you just stop moving, they're gonna get worse. We are made to move. Our own happiness. There's this fascinating research to me. The book on a train experiment, which is which will make me happier, ignoring people on the train and reading my book, or talking to a stranger. Well, our brains tell us, leave me alone, let me read my book. Research tells us exactly the opposite. Talking to strangers on the train will make you happier. And this in measurable, documented ways. What we think is good for us and what's actually good for us are not the same. And we mentioned some of the age. That's another thing with aging. I live in a beautiful spot. I'm comfortable. My dog's here. My cat's over there. I got stuff to read, stuff to do. I'm good. I have to remind myself, go out, go to that meeting, go to that concert, go down, hang out with other people. You need that. That's important. No matter what your brain is telling you.
Yeah. There's so many aspects to our lives. And one aspect that's really big these days, obviously, is we're online a lot. I'm online a lot. I don't read as much as I used to. I have a zillion books, but I don't read many books. And if I read a book, I read it now on Kindle because my eyesight makes it easier to read. But if you look at the kinds of habits that we have because of our digital technology, with kids, everybody has issues. We're always on our phone. We've seen so many of those things. You're in a car to a group of people and everybody's looking at their phone. Nobody's talking to each other. So I made a decision years ago not to get a cell phone. I've never owned one. I just don't need it that much because what's that?
Or take the social media off your cell phone. There's a wonderful doctor, Dr. Laurie Santos. She teaches at Yale. And she has a free online happiness course. And she has a podcast, The Happiness Project. And she shares, and you can register for free. You can start today and go, and she'll take you through the research.
Can you send me the link for that and we'll put it below the interview? Sure.
I can send you that. I can send you my email is wellguide@proton.me. If you have questions for me, or the Harvard plate, what else do we mention? CDC. Yeah, that's all readily available stuff. And this is because we're not good at this. And this is really what coaching does, is that you are in charge of this. I'm not going to talk in anything or tell you things you don't want to hear. Unless you're in a place for this. If you're like, Tim, there's so much information, I don't know what to eat. I might then ask you, I hate this, by the way. I have to, Robert, do you mind if I make a suggestion? That's not a real question. To be polite, you're going to say yes, even if you're shut up and let me talk, right? I hate that. The real question is, Robert, are you asking me for suggestions? And that's something you could quite comfortably say, no, I'm just trying to explain. I get it, So it's not like I can't provide information, but most of the time it's like, no, that's not the issue. And then we can talk, about what is the issue. There's all these different things of health we're talking about. Nobody's going to take on all that at once. You'd go insane. And so, what we would do is after that first initial assessment is, Robert, what do you want to work on? How would you like to use our time today? And with my clients, one longtime client, sometimes we talk about for PT exercises. Sometimes we talk about getting out and walk and how that's going. And sometimes we talk about she's got a project she's working on that's bugging her. What's we don't like, here's the plan and do this. It's like, what seems to be the issue today, and let's make it not an issue. And some of this stuff, we started off talking about ordinary visionary, and I said I prefer the more practical, down to earth thing. Some of that is simple things, so many times a client has said, I have trouble getting to bed on time, and they tell me why. I said, no, if you had a 12-year-old who was telling you this, what would your response be? Would any of this fly?
Get to bed.
Or I have trouble remembering. Why don't you write yourself a note? Like, oh, I could do that. Well, let's do it right now. Go grab yourself a paper. Where would you see this? Go stick it there right now. And they laugh at me, but it gets done then. Or, especially, I'm totally sympathetic with the new age mystical stuff. Been there and lived there myself. But, you want to know the secret to manifestation? I know you know it. Pick a time, put it in your calendar. Now it will get done. It's It honestly is that simple. Oh, I should do that. When are you going to do it? Oh, this week. No, 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 no. Thursday at 11. Now it will happen.
Yeah. When you're working with people on their diet, I mean, diet is a big thing. I mean, first of all, we eat a lot of crap. The other thing is healthy food. We don't know how to cook it. It's like, yeah, I know I should eat more vegetables, but I don't know how. So there's so it it seems simple. I mean, you eat 2 or 3 meals a day. You make sure that that food is fairly healthy. You cook it, and that sounds so simple, but it's not. So, how do you help people sort of break things down so they can see, oh, I can change that one thing? Like, for instance, I used to drink Diet Coke all the time. And one day I said, at least I think it's better than Coke with sugar, but the aspartame and stuff like that isn't good. So one day I just stopped doing it. But then I started drinking Snapple iced tea that was diet iced tea. And then one day I said, I'm just going to get rid of all these things. So one thing at a time. And now when I'm thirsty, I just drink water, for God's sake. What's the big deal? But that's such a simple thing, but it was so hard to change. I would buy these 24 packs of Diet Coke every week and drink it all the time. And, I really liked it and I liked the sweetness, but now I don't miss it. So this thing is, like to take the one thing and work at getting Diet Coke out of your diet, or Coke or whatever else isn't really healthy for you. So how do you sort of go about helping people slowly make a change from X to Y, or start making their own meals that are healthy as opposed to, really bad?
Well, first we narrow down on what's actually the issue. So, I want to improve my diet. That's not a goal. That's really vague. I want to eat healthier. That's really vague. What does eating healthier look like for you? Until we get down to, Tim, the main thing is I drink all this soda. All right. What would you like to drink instead? No, it sounds so simple, but really getting it down to what's there. Or, I keep snacking on potato chips, even though I know better. What would you like, to do? So I narrow it down to a behavior. Eating a healthy diet is a concept, not a behavior. I keep reaching for diet soda instead of a healthier drink. That's a behavior change. So what's the behavior you're trying to change? What behavior do you want to replace it with? I love carrot sticks and hummus, but I probably wouldn't say, oh my God, I could really go for carrots and hummus right now. Especially if there's potato chips sitting there. It's like my mom used to say when I'm a kid, Mom, I'm hungry. Can I have a cookie? No, if you're hungry, have an apple. I'm not hungry for an apple. Then you're not really hungry. And
my mom said that too.
Yeah. And that really points out the lies we're telling ourselves. I'm hungry. I need potato chips. That's nonsense. But if the hummus is already there and the carrot sticks are cut up and they're in the front of the fridge, that's easier. So it comes down then to what makes things easier for a person. It goes back to what happened right before you grabbed the diet soda. What happened right before you bought that. And for different people, different things are going to work. For some people, I'm going to make meals ahead of time. For some people, it is a knowledge thing. Easy thing to fix. If you've never done this before, I've been a vegetarian chef. If you've never done this before, you don't really appreciate how much flavor is in vegetables. And that's before we turn to spices and recipes, and how easy much of this is to make. That's all readily solvable. There are 1,000 sources for this stuff. and I can certainly pass some of those on. Um, recognizing that as we change our one diet isn't one diet isn't one diet. Our dietary needs change. I need more protein than I used to, and so I that's a solvable problem. But it means I have to change my meal planning a little bit. How much protein did I get today? So I'm kind of dancing around your question. I can feel that, but it's so individual. But what behavior are you doing? What behavior do you want to do instead? What's happening? Where those paths split off? What do you see as your options? And then when the days that doesn't happen, what happened? What's our plan for it? If we can prevent it, that's great. Well, usually it's because I was working too hard. I skipped lunch and okay, let's start there. Or I was feeling stressful and then okay, well, we need better strategies then. I give an example of what I'm talking about. People talk about comfort food. Now, I'm not against comfort food, but the phrase bothers me. The whole idea is it's okay to eat this because it's for comfort. Well, that tells me two things. One is you ate something other than you thought would be good to eat, and you dealt with an emotional issue by covering it up instead of dealing with it. Now we have two problems, where before we just had one.
So, a big part of this seems to be to increase one's awareness of what one is already doing.
Right. We make
I don't know if you have people make an inventory of what's in their fridge. What are you buying? I drink a lot of fruit juice. Well, really, that's not that good for you. It's almost like mainlining sugar when you're drinking fruit juice, a lot of it. Things like that, whatever. Right. Or white bread, or too much red meat, or I don't know. One of the problems, I think, Tim, is we have so many choices these days. The amounts of food on the shelf are mostly processed food.
Right.
Cookies and chips and this and that, and it's so easy to buy them, and they're so satisfying short term.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You can go to the store to get food and not see any actual food, especially convenience stores.
Right.
And that's a problem. That's especially a problem. We talk about where incidences of disease are high, metabolic disorders, or inner city poor sections. But well, why can't they eat better? Well, you go look at the stores that are there, and it's the answer. Their choices suck. And so we have to help people out with that, with what's doable as they see it from where they are. In my case, I'm in the middle of the rural area. There aren't a lot of choices, but I live 2 miles from community-supported agriculture. 85% of my food comes from the farmer down the street. It's
it does?
Yeah,
wow.
Absolutely. And then we share in the bounty. I have a freezer. It's full of vegetables. Right now it's broccoli season. We bring home bags of broccoli and chop them up in the freezer. In March, I know I'll be bringing home a gallon of maple syrup for making granola and so forth. It's so I know what I'm getting, and I know it's organic. But even in hard situations, we can change little things. So, for example, green leafy vegetables is to nutrition what oxygen is to breathing. I had a client who was stationed, had a job at a university in Mongolia. In Mongolia, you want meat, that's easy. If you want vegetables, that's a whole different thing. But without making a huge project, anybody can grow lettuce in their windowsill, and just pick what you need, and that with very little care. It's there are So it's about picking a solution that somebody feels is good for them. And once again, it's a solution I'd prefer they come up with themselves, unless they're really stuck. Like, are you looking for ideas here? Do you need some information? Because if their own idea as they see it, they know that it fits into their own life. I don't know that.
Right.
And they know it's something that they already see as something they can do. And then I'll follow up, not the way you would think, the old whip cracking kind of coaching. So, once we have a plan, how do you feel about this? Robert, on a scale of 1 to 10. And, you might say 7. And before I might have said, well, why not an 8? Instead I say 7's pretty good. Why a 7? Yeah. Why not a 6? What makes you, so I'm always reinforcing that what makes you confident as a 7. So we're always building those can-do things, those things that already are strengths. And that's going to vary from person to person. There's an assessment I love to use online that's the only one of these that's actually evidence-based, like Myers-Briggs and all these things. These are just something somebody made up that just became popular. There's no evidence there at all. It's a category.
They're interesting.
But this one is, the fascinating thing about it is that it lists your strengths in more or less in order. And your top strengths, if I were to ask you, so what do you think your top 5 strengths will be? You will tell me invariably strengths 6 through 10. And that's because strengths 1 through 5 are things you just take for granted. They're just who you are.
So they're effortless because they're built in.
Right. And so getting back in touch with that is you have skills that are easy to use that you're probably not even looking at. There will be people who really struggle with putting things into action. If you were my client, you have no problem with that at all. You a whole lifetime of doing this. It's second nature to you. And so it's matching those things to what are this person's strengths, and whatever that might be. If your little girl comes home from school and you never ever fail to have a snack waiting, well, make you one too while you're at it. What's already happening here that's positive that we can latch on to. And then looking at the stories we tell ourselves. I had a client once who's like, I'm a vet. Sometimes I can't plan because emergencies happen. It's like, well, that's true, but do emergencies happen every single day? Well, no. How often do they happen? I don't know, like every week or so. Well, then that's not really an objection. The days that happens, don't do it. The other days, do it. And I say all this without judgment. Like I said, I spent years lying to myself as an alcoholic. Things like, how can you believe this is not a problem? I can only tell you at the time you believe the lies you tell. So I totally get it. And it's helping people see what we all do, that cognitive dissonance, to use the psychology term. We believe one thing, but something else is happening. So a large part of coaching is simply listening and asking the questions that help you see, wait, that doesn't seem right. I'll give you an example. A diabetic client who is, well, it's tax season. I'm so busy. I can't get in there exercise. Okay, well, when can you? Well, when tax season ends. Okay, what will happen then? Well, I'll be out and I'll be doing yard work, and then I'll lose the weight and it's okay. Did you do yard work last year? Yep. And did you lose weight last year? silence. Okay. So, and this is not to pick
So
on
it's all very
Mediterranean.
conceptual about what will happen as opposed to
Exactly. We
reality
believe
based. Yeah.
about ourselves that if we take a close look, they really just aren't true.
Yeah.
You know, reminds me of when, when I was teaching, when students would say, this is so, I can't do this. It's so hard. I said, if you haven't done anything yet, you don't know if it's hard yet.
But conceptually, it seems hard.
It is. And a good example is what I joked about earlier when
Yeah.
I said, Robert, I'm not good at networking. You said, Tim, nobody's good at something they've never done before.
Yeah.
I'd better go in there and get
I've
better.
actually said some wise things about that. Yeah. Really, yeah. So we sort of edge into things and try to figure out, well, given who I am and what I've done and what I want, what's true, what's a little step. Because change, you see this a lot online with the online YouTube advertising, especially. This miracle frigging cure for this. Take this substance and then. And we fall into that because it sounds so simple. If I take this vitamin or this serum or this God knows what else, that some of this stuff is probably quite good, but some of it is, it taps into our thing of just wanting it to be easy and just solves it for us. And
yeah, I'm going to step on some toes here. Dr.
Go ahead.
Roca, he's a god in the alternative universe. Medicine universe. He's a total scam artist. So look at his website. The first thing it does, disclaimer, because nobody's ever clicked on it. You click on it, it disproves everything the rest of the damn page says.
Really?
But
none of this really works.
But he's legally covered, and it's as slimy as Vance. It's just outright bullshit. Things that I think my favorite of all time is ear candles. Light the candle, will draw out the wax. A 6th grade science student could explain to you why that's nonsense. Even the manufacturers disavow it because it's nonsense. But I have people swear by it. What do
you think about this Dr. Gundry?
I'm not familiar.
Oh, he has this whole thing about lectins are the worst thing in the world. Lectins are in legumes and all of these things. So he gives you this very strange diet that eliminates a lot of very healthy foods.
Yeah.
And this guy has a lot of credibility because he was a very famous heart surgeon. And he does all these commercials and he's very charismatic and very conversational. But it just feels like a frigging cult to me. Lectins are and you can't even find anything about lectins. It's like it's sort of something he found, glommed onto it, made it a thing, eliminate from that, all these sort of gimmicky kind of things.
Right.
And they're just nonsense.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There are over 2,000 forms of Qigong. You know why? Because they're all competing with each other. Not because this one is the miracle thing. If you're looking for the next miracle thing, we already have solid diet.
Right.
Eat healthy, exercise, stress management, get some sleep, get out and see other people. You will be healthier.
Yeah.
It's just not complicated. You have problems beyond that. That's why we have medical providers. And there will be problems beyond that. I had a problem with my eye a couple months ago, and it's like, that's beyond what I can do. But there are ophthalmologists for that. And that's okay. Functional medicine. It sounds so great. We're about having the body can do its own healing. Well, if you're all about the body doing its own healing, why is your business model entirely about supplements? What happened to the body healing? It's It's entirely about selling things and doing tests that aren't even legal in some states.
Really?
It's and I know that people believe this, but it's fraudulent. You know, and then, you know, even to other things, there are chiropractors who are wonderful, and there are chiropractors who are total frauds. Unbelievable stuff. There are, and then you get into the whole, you know, mystical thing, like, you know, psychic surgery and you know, medical intuitives, and it's like I'm open to a ton of things that are like in Chinese medicine, especially where there's no good or bad evidence, but there's interesting results. That needs to be studied more, not this is proof. But in the case of, you know, well, my medical intuitive told me I need to do this, this, and this. If you then went and got an objective test that confirmed it, I would be wicked awesome impressed. If you just said, okay, so I better go do it, you're an idiot. I'm sorry, you're an idiot.
But we don't want to think. We just want someone to give us the answer.
We're overwhelmed, we're frustrated, want control. Why else would you say, I don't care about the scientific evidence, I want essential oils to do what vaccines do?
Right.
And the whole point is that not, you know, I obviously I'm sharing what my thoughts are on this, but I've had clients who think this, and it's like, that's okay. We talk about it, and some of them got decided on their own to, well, maybe I'd better get the vaccine after all. That sounds like it might be a good idea, but we're overwhelmed, and so we dig our heels in. We're defensive. But my point is, for understandable reasons. I'll give an easier to understand example. Cancer patient. Somebody gets cancer. Every single person they know buries them under articles and suggestions, and here's what you need to do, and do this and this and this. And they are already dealing with a ton, and they're overwhelmed. What these cancer patients need more than anything else is 30 minutes of fucking peace. Give them a space where they can just be calm. You know, all of it's well-meaning, but we have to understand. And not like I said, we're mentally ill, we're physically ill, and we needs to be approached that way. It's like some of the more recent studies on dementia, for example. My dad has dementia, so is that the things that this person is saying actually do make sense inside their brain. It's just losing translation. The same thing about schizophrenia is like, you know, if you can put together the pieces, what they're saying actually does make sense. It's been fragmented. And so really try to understand this. Like, why isn't this patient, you know, following doctor's orders? Why isn't this patient doing PT? It's like what they're doing makes sense. Listen for how it makes sense to them and how it fits where they are. Not because, well, we have to get down to where they are. No, because they know better than we do. My client knows better than I do what is right for him or her. Doesn't matter how much knowledge or research I have on it. So the first thing I have to do is listen. First thing I have to do is unconditional support, and not correct, but you know what? Asking clarifying questions, not asking, you know, the kind of questions that people would usually, or do the thing people would usually ask that actually shut down conversation.
Right.
You know, saying, you know, hey, you did good there, Robert. It's like, now I'm judging you. Right? Now the next thing is going to be based on, well, what will he think about this? I don't want to do that. I want to keep it positive. I want to keep it going. I don't want to shut down the conversation. Not asking yes or no questions. Not asking stupid questions like, can I ask you a question? That's not a real question. The real question is, Robert, I hear that you you're mainly drinking Snapple now. It is, and it's how are you feeling about that? Not getting stuck in therapy questions. Like, so why do I do this? I have no idea. Ask your therapist. But talk about what behavior you're doing and what behavior you want to do instead. Or even, I don't want to make any changes, but I know that I should. I can work with that. I'm not going to talk you into it. I'm going to help you explore it.
Yeah.
Until you're ready to go, you know what? I think I'd like to start drawing up some plans. Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What might those plans look like for you? It's really, in the end, really common sense and respect for the people you're talking to. Don't handle them. Don't manipulate them. Don't blow smoke up their butts. Listen. We're trained to listen for what's called change talk versus sustain talk. Most people, when they talk, they'll give you a list of why they can't change anything. That's okay. Listen. But when they start to say something that indicates the possibility of making changes, not jump all over it, but reflect that back. I'm hearing you see it's possible to make a change. What might that look like if you were to do that? Or I'm hearing, that smoking is just a non-issue for you right now, but you're concerned about your cholesterol. Let's talk. It's meeting people where they are. If somebody smokes too much, but they want to talk about exercise, there's no reason to turn that ship. Let's talk about exercise. If they start exercising, you're going to realize smoking is holding them back.
Right.
And they're going to bring it up.
Yeah, I love hearing about this approach because it's very respectful of the client, of where they are, what they want, where they want to go. And then, but you have a vast storehouse of knowledge and information, but you can't just graft that onto somebody. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Press the button and it and you can do it. But that's not how it works, because we're in this system of conditioned habits and addictions and pain, all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's subtle stuff. You have to kind of edge your way into, where are you and what's next for you, and I feel that there's a partnership there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And understanding that, Stephen Covey has a great illustration of this. In a seminar, he takes off his glasses and he hands it to the person in the front. It's like, here you've been having trouble. That happened to me. Turns out it was my eyesight, and they gave me these glasses. Put these on. How is that now? I can't see anything. You have to try harder. Apply yourself. These people today, they no. And
I wish I understood
our conversations among adults. It's like we're 6-year-olds. You think this, well, you're just stupid. It's where is that going to get us? It's like, they're not stupid. They disagree with you. And they disagree with you for reasons. What are they? And even if those things negative, well, they support a candidate because they're irrationally afraid of this, that. Okay. That didn't come from nowhere. What's going on with that? What's behind that? So it's just, it's not something we get into in health coaching, of course, but it's that kind of thing. Is what's behind this? What's driving this? What are they actually looking for? And helping them find it. And that so that they get that dopamine rush, so that they do feel good. And small, measurable, reasonable steps. Or we can't, I feel like I'm doing better. We'll know you're doing better. Okay, last week you were gonna, put the hummus in front instead of the potato chips. How'd that work out? Well, I ate hummus like 5 days out of the 7. Okay, last week it was none out of 7. What,
Yeah. So acknowledging the progress as you go.
how do you feel about that? I feel like that's good. 2 days potato chips won't kill me. Okay, we're good. What would you like to work on today then?
So I just want to thank you for taking this time to do this interview, because it really gave me some insight into there's no perfect answer. It's an exploration, one step at a time, into better health and well-being. And that your coaching and your approach really takes people as they are, not as they should be, and works with them one step at a time in a gentle kind of way. And I think that's
Exactly.
it really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, they've done amazing things already. They need to hear that. And then how can we do what you already know how to do, what you already do well, what you're already motivated to do? How can we use that rather than you're not doing well enough? That doesn't help. That just makes me feel like, what's the point?
Yeah. So thank you, Tim.
Welcome.
This was really, really interesting.
Glad to see what we're each doing in semi-retirement.